Alright, so we gotta cover the last thing here. That last section is about sustainable development. You gotta understand that the whole reason we did all of this, the ecology section, is so that you guys will understand how the environment, how the things that we do to the environment can affect us in the long term. You may not think that the extinction of some animals is really gonna affect us, but somehow it can. Because everything in an ecosystem is connected. So it is important that we talk about this stuff because we have to know what our impact on the environment is and what problems it can cause for us. So within that sustainable development section, it talked a lot about some different laws that we have in place now. Oops. Let's use black to start at least. You guys know that if not in Nebraska, at least nearby, there are different laws going on. Like in Colorado, you have to take your vehicle in to have an emission check done to make sure that you don't have some old clunker on the road that's gonna be polluting a lot. So they have to actually do that, and your car has to pass the test, or else you can't get it licensed. You can't drive it legally. Now, probably gonna be a hard thing to enforce in some areas. In where we live, a lot of you guys probably have old beat up clunker trucks. Yes?
No, we're just saying
Yeah.
you have.
Oh, you were saying you have one, I get it. But that's actually pretty reasonable for, out in a pasture somewhere. You don't really want to beat up your nice new car. But at the same time, it's not nearly as big of a problem in Nebraska as it is in, say, LA. Hasn't anybody ever been there and seen the smog? It's beautiful, isn't it? Yeah, it's really, really disgusting, and it makes you feel like you shouldn't breathe at all when you're there. But, so there are different laws in effect because of that. So we have, there's that Clean Air Act, there's Clean Water Act, there's even Endangered Species Act, so we're worried about the air that we're breathing, the water that you're drinking. You've heard of that in the news too, right? How it's been poisoned in some places. What is it, like Flint, Michigan or whatever? It's a pretty big deal when that happens. We need to take care of our water supply. The other one was Endangered Species Act. So we have laws into effect trying to protect the ecosystems because we know that those things are a problem. With the Endangered Species Act, the other major thing it talked about was an umbrella species. And all that meant was that if you're protecting one species, a lot of times other species will get a benefit too. If you're trying to save sea turtles, and the main reason why they're dying out to begin with is because they're getting caught in fish nets. They're not intentionally trying to kill the turtles, but it's happening anyway. But if you start to change the way that people fish, and those aren't being affected anymore, then you're also going to save other species, like say a shark, a swordfish, other things like that would also get caught up in those nets and also get hurt by that fishing style. So umbrella species is just saying, if you're going to protect one thing, a lot of times there's a lot of other things that get a benefit as well. And sometimes when you're trying to protect one thing, you need to make sure that maybe one of its food sources is available. So you're protecting that thing as well and making sure that it's thriving to protect that one species. So we have laws into effect, and that's a big thing, right? People have to vote on that stuff all the time to put those laws into effect. And you need to understand how what we do can affect all of these things. The only other thing that's majorly important in that sustainable development is understanding that human carrying capacity. So I'm going to draw a picture for that, but I'm going to need a new slide here.
Human carrying capacity.
Yeah. You guys remember we talked about a carrying capacity before with that logistic growth. So right now, actually, the human population is increasing exponentially. We're at like, I don't know, at the time this book printed, it was like somewhere just under 8 billion people. We're probably over that now. Did it say 6 in this book?
Yeah.
But it's really close to 8 at this point. If you look at more recent data. So we're increasing exponentially, but we've only been increasing for a little while. We were previously at a carrying capacity that was holding us at about 2 billion.
What happened?
And that was only 100 years ago. What happened 100 years ago that could affect our carrying capacity, that could raise it up?
Baby
What
boomers.
was that? Modern medicine.
I'm done.
And it wasn't baby boomers necessarily,
Aw,
although they
thanks.
probably did help with that exponential growth. But modern medicine was huge. Instead of people only living to 40 to 50, now people live to 80 to 100. Anybody else say something different? Saying
Technology.
technology's big. The fact that you can ship food from one place to another. There's no way that a city could function or exist without trucks shipping food across the country. So our carrying capacity is increased from that time, and we think that it's probably somewhere around, and this is a just conservative estimate, about like 14 billion.
Jeez, we're out of room.
That's so many people.
And they're pretty sure that it's around 14 billion because they can see that although we've been growing exponentially, those baby boomers, that was about here where it was almost straight up and down. But it's actually starting to level out a little bit. You know, as this continues, it's going to have to level off. So you see that the slope changes on this graph over time, and it's going to start to level off, and we're starting to do that. So although we're about here, we know that we're approaching a limit in the near future because that growth is starting to level off a little bit. But again, the main reason why this increase exists is because of medicine and a big portion because of technology. And what do we use to run pretty much all of our technology, like the lights in this room and everything else? Ultimately, fossil fuels, non-renewable resources. So what happens when we run out of fossil fuels?
We all die. Solar well or screwed.
We wouldn't necessarily all die, but that carrying capacity could drop right back down to 2 billion. And then what happens to the other 6 billion people?
We die.
They would die because there's no way that we could support them. It wouldn't affect people in our neck of the woods nearly as much as somebody in a big city because obviously we have lots of food around us. We ship our food elsewhere. That's how we make money, right? So it wouldn't affect smaller communities nearly as much as those big cities, but definitely there'd be no way to support the population that we have without that technology, so it would drop off drastically, and a lot of people would die as a result. So that's the main thing here.
So 12 billion people would die.
Well, if it got that high, right now we're only at like 8, right?
Hey, pull together.
So if it dropped off right now,
How are we on the
6 billion people would die.
Not really.
Okay, so you guys get kind of the gist of that. We know that we need to switch over to more reusable, not the non-renewable, more renewable solar energy, wind energy, things like that.
Hey, did you know that they're trying to make a thing where, like, to charge your phone, you, like, breathe into this